pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I ask Andy to pray, if we could just remember Ray Templeton and their family with a brief moment, please. And then Andy, what do you feel like that?
Dear Father God, we just come to you to tell you how much we love you, how much we appreciate your love and your grace and your mercy. We just pray tonight that you bless those that are here today and their families. We pray for your spirit to guide us and lead us tonight. Help us to remember what our role is to help our kids, help our students, and to be the best they can be. And we just pray tonight, Lord, we just glorify you in all our decisions we make and our discussions we have. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Mr. Templeton. So,
I think that could be said for me too.
Desiree, you got the roll calls?
Yes, sir.
Did you call Chris's name and he didn't say
He didn't
no?
answer.
Yeah, he didn't answer. Well, welcome everyone. It's glad to see you. I hope everyone had a nice 4th of July. It's time that we have open forum. If anyone would like to address the board, this is the time. We'd ask you to give your name, and you have a 5-minute limit. If the item is not on the agenda, we cannot discuss it. It's not a question and answer session. It's your chance to share your thoughts and feelings with the board. So the floor is open.
Charlie will get his chance in a minute.
My name is Hannah Jowers, and this is my husband, Clay. I am a very proud 2000 graduate of Wylie ISD, and Clay is a 1999 graduate of Cooper. We both attended Hardin-Simmons University, where I played basketball, and Clay was a volunteer strength and conditioning coach. We were married in 2004, then moved away for 2 years for Clay to coach at the University of Hawaii, and then returned in 2006 for Clay to attend PT school at Hardin-Simmons. We have 7 amazing kids, 6 here on earth and 1 little girl waiting for us in heaven. Our oldest is 14 and entering into 9th grade, and our youngest is 1. And so life is very full and very busy, but it's an incredible adventure that I am very blessed to navigate. When Aaliyah, our oldest, was entering school age, we began praying into what our options were. We ended up enrolling her into a Christian school and led the faith-based education. She completed kindergarten and 1st grade, and we had a wonderful experience. But towards the end of her 1st grade year, the Lord began stirring in my heart the idea of homeschooling. We knew several in the homeschool community and loved watching how these families functioned and how connected the children were both to the Lord and to each other. So, the summer after her 1st grade year, we decided to take 6 weeks and try homeschooling. And was it easy? No, it was a challenge, as I'm sure everybody has faced in the COVID year, but I knew it was exactly where the Lord was calling our family. So, as Clay and I have grown in our faith as Christians, and as we continued the path of homeschool education, our desire to have the freedom to provide a faith-based education grew as well. This past May, we wrapped up our 7th year of homeschooling.
Feels like a long time when you're in the middle of it, but life goes by fast. Anyway, hello, I'm Clay Jowers. Obviously, the main reason that we're here is we're speaking in regards to the homeschool bill, HB 547, that passed last month, and the discussion and the vote on it, whether Wylie's going to choose to opt in or opt out of it for this next year. So for everybody to know, HB 547 is a bill that made it legal for homeschool students within the district that they live and pay taxes in to participate in UIL-sponsored activities. There's been legislation in Texas every 2 years for as long as I have known about homeschooling, and we've been a part of that 7 years. For something like this to pass, it's never passed until just recently. There's about 30 other states that have laws like this, and they've had them for multiple years. before Texas passed it this year. I've had the opportunity to read this bill before it passed, while it was in discussions, and since it's passed. And I just want to stress that as I've read it over and over again, I believe it gives an incredible amount of freedom at the local level to the districts, to homeschool families, and to the UIL to regulate homeschool participation in activities. And the power of choice is where I think it should be, which is with people in that community and not in some bureaucratic process. So Hannah and I grew up here. We're strongly connected in the community of Abilene, many different ways, from us going to high school here, to Hardin-Simmons, to church involvement, to serving in the community. I've been at Dyce Air Force Base for the last 10 years. I was a PT in Abilene, Coleman, Brownwood, and have coached a lot of kids in this area with my strength conditioning background. And obviously during that time, we've had a lot of kids. And as our kids have grown up, they've played a lot of sports, and the majority of the kids that our kids have played with, we have coached in one form or another. And a lot of them are connected in this school district and in this school. Over the last several years, as they've gotten older, we've consistently discussed with them, do we as a family, do we want to go to public school? Do we want to continue homeschooling? And what's our kids' choice? And they have consistently chosen, and we have felt led to continue to homeschool. And we want to be the primary educators of our kids as long as they desire to continue to do that. We're here to express favor, voting for this, obviously. We would love the opportunity to see our kids be able to participate with others who happen to be in public school, kids that they've grown up with, that we're connected with. We know that new laws and new bills create new headaches and new ground to plow, and there can be a lot of fear and emotions and things that come along with that. And I would say that the bottom line is, if you know what the bill says and you know what UIL, their proposed amendments, and all of the details that go along with that, I would say that there shouldn't be any fear in any decision that's being made. Whether you choose to vote for it or against it, I just want you guys to make an informed decision, one way or the other. Obviously, we're for it. We want our kids to be able to participate in school, but you know what? Our life is not gonna live and die off of y'all's vote. So, we're not here to try to manipulate anybody to do one thing or the other, but we're here to answer questions as we have ingested this bill, and as much as we can, so that we can provide good info. So anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else like to share on any topic? Don't be bashful. No other brave souls?
We talk about any topic?
You only have 5 minutes. And you're not a preacher, so I don't have to worry about you busting that 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to
But
say something.
you gotta come on up here and tell us everybody who you are.
Yeah, I'll be real quick.
Raise this up.
Yes. My name is Samuel Maroney. I am a physician here in the area and have the privilege of getting to assist in taking care of Wylie athletics. I'm also a homeschool dad and a public school dad. So I have been able to exist on both sides of this thing. So 2 years ago, we sent our oldest to school. Next year, Joya, our third daughter, will be going to Wylie West Junior High, and we'll still be homeschooling. Our youngest will be in 1st grade. Most of y'all know that our kids participate in sports. And I think this House bill creates a great opportunity for our communities, especially not just Abilene, but our surrounding communities. Because a lot of our smaller communities don't have access to things. Like in Abilene, we do have some access. It's limited, but not completely absent. But some of the other smaller surrounding communities have no access to athletics or UIL activities, choir, band, drama, lots of other things. So this bill is about a lot more than just sports. And so I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I understand the fears of some of the coaches. So I've talked to coaches, a lot of coaches about this. I have friends that are coaches, and the concerns about people
manipulating this bill for their own benefit, okay, to be able to get kids eligible that they couldn't get eligible. And I think at the local level, there's ways to prevent that. Creating standards that kids that are going to participate in real activities have to pass in order to be able to participate. And also, if you have a kid, for instance, that doesn't pass and they decide to homeschool, well, if there's no pass and play, there's still no pass and play even if they go home. And so I think there's ways to protect the integrity of sports as it would be without ruling these kids out from the opportunity to participate in these things. So for instance, my oldest daughter, Kenya, plays basketball and runs track at Wylie. Well, before coming to Wylie, she wasn't able to participate in track or volleyball, which were two interests of hers, because there was no access to something like that. She did participate in the Abilene Hawks basketball. My wife and I actually coached with the Abilene Hawks, the homeschool basketball team here. So, I kind of see both sides of it, and I think this is a great opportunity for our community to just to bring in some kids who are kind of not getting to participate in other things, and I think it would be a blessing to those families. And I think it's important to remember, though, that it's more than just about sports. So I would love it if my kids when they were younger could participate in choir and drama and other things like that, in addition to sports. And anyway, that's all I have to say. I think this is a wonderful bill. I think it's a little bit overdue. I mean, if we look at some of the other states surrounding us, I believe there's 35 states here in the U.S. that have the 10 Tebow bill, as it would be called. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you guys for your service to our community.
Wow, 4 minutes and 34 seconds. Thanks, Dr. Crowley. Anyone else? All right, we'll close that time. Items of board action. Everyone should have had an opportunity to review the minutes from last time. Unless there's objection, we'll approve those as presented. Seeing none, let it be. Consent agenda, Mr. Light, let's talk about how we're going to pay our bills.
Let Carol go over those for you. Shorter list this month, I hope. That's good.
Now, summer brings a little bit fewer bills, but it doesn't seem like they're not goes down that much. Beginning on page 7, you see there's a $10,000 payment to Linton Eaton for the 2 portable classrooms that we moved to the high school.
That's half of the payment. Half down and half when we get them delivered. He's been struggling getting them here due to the rain. I can't get them.
The June payroll amount is $2.6 million. Several expenses for the graduation, the Expo Center rentals, $4,800.
That was the entirety of that expense?
Well, we also paid the city for security, EMS for their services, so there's some other things.
But just the building is 48, okay.
That's right.
Not too bad.
Didn't rain on us.
On page 8, Angel Track Systems, they have bus cameras for us, so we were having to replace some and improve some cameras for our buses. Down at the bottom of page 8, you'll see the first payment to Kipper Construction for phase 1, $1,097,000, and then at the top of page 9 is the second payment for phase 2 construction, $147,000. I wanted you to note that we had a page break right there.
Carol, what is that on page 8, the bottom, JAMF, the subscription?
Right, if you wanna,
They manage our iPads, and so it's a service to manage the.
he's right there.
Yeah, without, we are able to push out our apps, everything is remote. That's the only way we can control those remotely. And so that's how we run updates, push out apps, and basically take care of them for teachers.
Okay. Is that new?
No, we've had that this is going on 6 years.
Okay.
It's a 1 year, once a year.
1 year. Thank you.
A little further up the, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Circle Associates for 15 years.
Yeah, they, that's for one of our special ed students. We have an agreement with to pay those fees. And we're down to 1 more year of that.
One more semester.
One more
One more
semester.
payment.
Good
One
deal.
more payment. Okay.
On page 9, SHI, Government Solutions, that's for Chromebooks. We got for our Reading Academy, that $20,000 there. I looked, that was 64 Chromebooks. And the supplemental bills you would have seen previously on page 11 includes the $163,000 for Black Rock Construction. They're doing the water line to the new campus. And then our electric bill with Taylor Electric, $40,000 on that. So that was a shorter bills list than you'll probably see at any other time.
This, it's not on here, but that prompted me to think that, when is our next payment, or to
Bond?
to the people that do the electrical services?
Ideal impact?
Yes, is that where, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's actually gonna let.
Oh, yes, there you go.
So, it's about
That's funny.
2 months away? I can't remember what the next, it's a quarterly payment. We
I didn't
pay
even see him quarterly. come in, okay.
He's gonna
Quarterly.
tell you all
I
about
know.
it.
Well, I knew that was on it, I knew that was on it, but I couldn't remember when the next payment was, okay, so it's quarterly,
Yes.
okay.
I'll pay you in cash today.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Need to erase that.
Any more questions about the bills? Anybody before she goes into cash balance, etc.?
Page 12 has got the cash balances at the end of June in all of our bank accounts, $13,923,000. That'll continue going down until we start our next school year, basically, or next tax year rolls around. I did have on our debt service, our bond payment will be August 15th. We'll pay $935,000. So that's where you can see the $1.4 million in debt service will give us a surplus that we're able to apply to next year's bond payments. And the revenue report is the next page. See, at the end of June, our tax collections were at 96.78%. They have one tax deposit that comes in after the first. Usually I get it in the bank about the first or second, and it was a pretty big deposit, so that number's still going up. And you can see on line 5716, 5719, those are tax deposits that are above the budgeted amount, and so we did tweak our budget plan for next year based on those numbers. We don't always have a line 5745 insurance recovery, but because of the frozen pipes on the high school chillers, we did have a insurance check this year. And earlier, Mr. Light mentioned the NIFA funds. That at the bottom line, 5812, is where we would have NIFA funds, but we don't have any that we received this year. And that's for new instructional facilities a lot. The state has a bucket of money and they just divvy it out to all the schools that apply for it. So the expenses are the next page, 14. at the end of June, we were at 93% of our budget. Most of that, you can see line 81 has gone above the budgeted amount. And that's causing the overall total to be less.
Yeah, if you took construction out of it, we'd be at about 81%.
And then page 15 is quarterly investment report through the end of June, which we are keeping all of our funds in the local bank because the interest rates better than everywhere else.
Man, that's impressive.
Yeah, that wouldn't even buy lunch, would it?
Anybody have any questions for Carol?
Well, to quote Mr. Ray Templeton, I move we pay the bills.
Good job, Carol.
Did you get that, the other discussion? Anybody? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, Desiree. All right, Charlie. We're gonna skip down, folks, to item 5B, construction update.
Our building structure steel was completed about 2 weeks ago. We had our inspector come in, he's done his inspections. Still have a few out erecting the bus drop-off canopies, and I expect they'll finish up sometime next week. The bricklayer's right on their tail. Most of the brick veneers complete on the building. Right now, they're doing the detail work at the main entry, a lot of burnished block there, and some other features there they're finishing up. And they're about the same. They'll be finished up in about 2 to 3 weeks. Roofing's gone well. We have about 54,000 square feet total, and we've got about 40,000 that's dried in. So that's moving along real well. We're having a problem with the corrugated metal on the outside. Talked to the contractor today. They're looking at a 5 to 7 week delivery from today. And then once we receive that corrugated metal, it'll take us about 3 weeks to install. So that puts us finishing up that item about the 3rd week in September. So we're running a little behind on that item, but the rest of the shell items are in very good shape, and I don't see any problem. Releasing the interiors a little bit early has been a real benefit for us. A lot of the jobs here in Abilene are starting to finish up, so we have ample manpower available. We've got a flood of plumbers in there right now doing all the wall roughs. Probably by Thursday this week, we'll finish all the interior framing. So all of the areas are all framed up. We have an issue with the insulation, building insulation. We expect that to deliver about the end of July. And so that's a little bit of a problem for us, but we can go ahead and start hanging the drywall. We've got 2 major deliveries coming in this week for that. And then same as with the plumbers, we feel like we'll have ample manpower, and so they'll be able to get the rock up pretty fast. I've already spoken to the paint contractor, and right now we've got him set up to start up about the end of July, start his tape and bed work, and of course, he'll run the duration of the job. So we're starting to really start to move into the finishes now. Our duct work arrived today. We'll start doing all the duct work. We'll install the rooftop units as soon as all the flat roofs are complete. So we don't know the exact delivery date, but I expect we'll be setting units in about 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And so that'll be a one-day deal. They'll bring out a crane, they'll set every one of the units. We have about 40 units to go on top of the building. So that's running well. Made contact with the millwork contractor today, just to alert him that the framing's coming on. We'll be able to start measuring for all the millwork and towards the end of the month, and plenty of time to fabricate. So I think we made a good move by releasing it early, and that'll help us finish up a little bit early too. So things are looking well for us. The kitchen contractor's already on board. We've recently signed up the athletic equipment contractors, your basketball goals, your bleachers, So they're in the submittal process, and their items will take, a couple of 3 months to deliver. So they should be here without any problem for us. Well, things are moving along nicely with the exception of corrugated metal, and I don't foresee any problems right now with that. Running about 60 men total, give or take a few. And so anyway, I think we got some good activity going on out there. The weather's been a problem for us. Don't think it's been a major impact. It's just a nuisance. We just have to track through the mud, and it's pretty tough on the equipment and everything, just trying to get to the building. But haven't been that big a problem for us. So things have been moving along pretty well. I can answer any questions from you.
Charlie, on the corrugated metal, at that last meeting, we talked about the possibility of changing the finish. Is that, y'all taking that off the board, or?
No, sir, we're still exploring that. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting a sample in about 2 days. We'll submit that to the design team, see what they think about it. I'm not gonna make a judgment call on it myself, but I think you'd be better off to stick to the original selection. It's a nice looking product. And it's provided by a nationwide company, Behringer. They're notorious for having long delivery lead times. So, I knew it was coming, and so it put us across the finish line a little bit too much. So anyway, that's in the problem.
And the 3 big words, in the dry, you are.
Well, of course, it's rained quite a bit the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we had quite a bit of water coming in the building for the last couple of weeks. Mainly, we had some roof drains that weren't completely plumbed in. We finished those last week. Also, once they put the flat roof on, they have to do the trim work for all the RTU curves and rooftop unit curves. They completed those last week. The kitchen area is already done. And so now's when we start praying for rain, so we'll see how bad the leaks are. But I think we're in good shape. All the drywall gets set up 5/8 off of the floor, and I don't think we're gonna have a problem with water on the drywall, so I don't think it's gonna hold us up much at all. And all of our window frames are in, glass is in place, but nobody wants to set the windows until the last minute. So once we get closer to the end, we're ready to set the glass in place.
Is that for air circulation?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's plenty hot out there, so it's been pretty nice the last couple of days. Been in the 80s instead of the 100s. Not too bad.
And so the roofing part, is the roofing through, or?
They finished the kitchen area. That's the first place we did because we want to try to advance the schedule there as much as possible. They finished the flat roof at the classrooms. That's about 35,000 square feet. That includes the admin area. Right now, they're on the gym. They've got the insulation down about 75% across the way. We have one more small flat roof, and I think they'll finish that up in about next week sometime, and then we'll do the slope roofs. So the slope roofs are at the cafetorium, the main entry, and at the admin, there's a small slope roof there. And so what they'll do is they'll finish up all those flat roofs, and they'll put their insulation on top of the decking. They'll run plywood, and they run ice and water shield. And then that dries it in, and then they'll come back and paint some roofs on top of that. And we've got some on the bus drop-off campus there. So there's quite a bit of metal work there, and it kind of gives the design a pop, makes it look really nice. So things will move on.
And December 1st,
I don't think that'll be a problem.
you still zeroed in on December 1st. So that's
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, for the interior, so, and that'll give you plenty of time to do your setup for the Christmas break and be all set for the spring semester.
Good job, Sean.
Thank you, John. Thanks so much.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you.
All right, and now we're gonna move to item 5C, ideal impact.
Yes, sir. We have Robert Loza here today. He is the gentleman that came and made the original presentation along with his boss. Yes, please, that'd be awesome. So I'm gonna hand out a couple of items. You want to pass those down, if you pass those down, we'll get them handed over. And so, let me just, before Robert takes off on his presentation, let me just make a comment that, you know, when we did this, it was I'm gonna say, not a challenge, but something different that we've never done, and so there was definitely some angst. It was a big ticket item, and so, you know, as we looked at those things, one of the reasons I have Robert here today is because I think you want to see value for the dollar you spent. So, I've handed them these two sheets to Robert, and I'll just let you he does have a longer presentation he could share, but I think these two really beat it down to the main issue. So I'm gonna, Robert,
All right.
go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Light, and thank you, board, for having me here. I do want to say that just because I'm from Grapevine, our office is in Grapevine, I'm fully invested here because my nieces are graduates of Wylie ISD, and now their kids are coming through. So,
And we're really not happy about that. You know, I'm kidding.
and to prove that I support you guys, just in case, right? I had one of these and, you know, and I didn't buy all of them, they were purchased for me.
He knows how hard we had to fight those cases.
Yes, but, yeah.
Just
So
kidding.
thank you very much, that's good. So I've got two sheets that I passed out, and I did bring a PowerPoint, but when I sat with Mr. Light earlier today, he said, give us an overview, and then any questions that come up, address them as they go. So I want to draw your attention first to this sheet here. And originally, it is one sheet, but I added another sheet later. Don't look at that, don't read ahead. When we first started 18 months ago, the yellow box is what our goal was. And the $608,745 is the baseline that we were using with the buildings that were being included. Not included in that number are the two new schools and this building. Primarily the two new schools because they were just coming online 18 months ago. So we didn't have a baseline and they couldn't be included. So the way we look at it, if you look at basic commitment, that's like a B- grade. And we said that we believe if you just turn us loose, we can deliver 16% savings. The committed steward is an A- grade. And the difference between the two is not necessarily what we do or won't do, it's our partnership. How well do we work together? And that's why we can say we can do 21% doing the same things. Ultimately, the bottom line is we believe we can deliver over $2.7 million back to the district's M&O budget in the next 15 years. So that's the baseline of where we started. Some of the key wins as you move down is we used Campus Optimizer to implement an easy HVAC scheduling process with automatic, dynamic load rolling and weather adaptive smart times. We saved over $132,000 in just the first 12 months. So as you can see, that was way over the committed steward. And we identified a billing error in the PAC meter that resulted in $11,000 back to the district. And we don't see any of those savings. That's 100% back to you. And that's the beautiful thing about analyzing bills, which we know very, very well. And then also we increased comfort district-wide by implementing core comfort and humidity strategies. Now the key to that is we didn't do this blindly. We have done it in conjunction as teamwork with Mr. Light's team. And it has been very, very well. It's worked well as well. And then also, I thought I would put in a quantified number with, you said you saved money on the custom Campus Optimizer. It's about $60,000 on just the scheduling of the HVAC that takes into consideration all the different parameters that we use to project what is the best way to operate the campus, the facilities as a whole. The chart on the right, one of the things that we said to you guys and to Mr. Light was that we want to be above board every time. And the best way to do that is to present you with monthly savings. So that chart that you see on there is the monthly reports that you've received as a district from us as to how we've performed. The green the jagged one that almost looks like a Wylie W, that was unintentional, but those are the actual savings. The maroon brown one is the committed steward, and then below that is basic. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we are. Of the 18 months that we've been partners, we've only had 1 month where we actually didn't have any savings. And that's what you see in July of 20. So I asked the question of our project managers, what was going on in July? And apparently there were lots of projects going on in the high schools and the junior high, and the equipment was run a little bit differently than it was normal because of all the projects that were going on there. And that makes sense. The other fluctuation is we want to be above the committed steward, but because we're very fair and very accurate with our projections and our actual savings, we're going to put monthly what it actually is. So that's what we do. Any questions on that? The chart right below is just one example of what we call an energy intensity chart. And I use the elementary here where you have the darker spots. If you go down the left-hand side of the line, that's a 24-hour time span in 15-minute windows. And then across the bottom is the months that we're looking at. So what that does is we're looking at the 15-minute window of your demand on this particular meter to see how much energy is actually being drawn. So that helps us, and it helps you monitor, are we getting the results that we want to get based on the strategies and the applications that we're putting in there. So that's what that is. So that takes care of this first sheet. Any questions on this sheet?
You identified an error from, regarding the PAC?
Yes.
Back? Yeah.
They put in a multiplier from,
Yeah.
so it was a bookkeeping error, basically. And we would have had we talked about this at length. Actually, their guy called us when he was analyzing the bill. And he said, something's not right here. And so they started kind of digging into it. And as they got to it, Taylor looked at it with him and said, we have a bad multiplier on this month that shouldn't have, they couldn't figure out how it got there, but we would have never caught that.
Good.
You know, we would have said, man, that bill was high. Why was it so high that month? And of course, the PAC is used all the time. One of the things, I drive by there, if I see that garage door open, I'm going back there and shutting that garage door. They get mad at me sometimes. Things happen, and people, you leave a big garage door open when you're cooling that whole thing. I thought something like that could have been going on, but they actually found it was not the case, and it was a multiplier.
And that happens. We see things like that all the time. When you look at bills, now I don't do it, right? We have teams that do that. But when they look at them as many times as they look at that, and they know all the rate structures of the different utility companies and the different entities, they know when something doesn't look right, and they'll explore it. The second sheet is this one here. And this is probably what Mr. Light said, well, that's the one they're going to want to see. Because this turns the savings, energy savings. I'm an energy nerd, so I agree. I get excited about saving KLA per square foot, KLA per square foot, MCF per square foot, but not very many people do. What people get excited about is the dollars that are generated based on those savings. So this is a snapshot of the last 18 months, because that's how long we've been in partnership together. And this is broken up into quarterly savings reports. Even though we track it monthly, you're billed quarterly. And the column on the far right is the guarantee that we said we would meet on a quarterly basis. And if we didn't meet that quarterly guarantee, then we would write you a check for the difference. So if you go off to the left where it says the quarterly savings, starting with June 5th, 2020, you'll see quarterly savings of 44,000, and then moving on down, 41,000, 22,000, 58,000, 46,000. Those are the actual true savings of our tracking, and that's what generates that W. We don't want to see another W. but that's what's generating those savings. 20% of the savings stay with the district. So that number, right, those numbers added together is what you guys have kept in regards to the savings. And then 80% of the savings go to pay for the project. So if you notice, most of the quarterly payments that we have received from you guys are almost twice what we were guaranteeing, or are guaranteeing. So from a partnership standpoint, this is an excellent, excellent partnership. And there is no way that we can generate these kinds of savings and these kinds of dollars in savings without having a great partnership. So that's why I usually say in our presentation when we were here a year and a half ago, there should be a third column from the committed spirit to another one for the folks that are A+. And I believe that we can continue this. Now, this is work that still has to be done, right? So we can't just let up on it. We gotta continue to be able to say that. To date, you've saved over $213,000 in the 18 months that we've been together.
That's what we were looking at. So let me just say, so if you were to add the 20% that has actually gone into our bank, we've saved, we have put $42,000. That's at 20%. That goes into the bank. When we're through, when we pay this note off, you know, the note was actually carried by First Financial. But when we're through with them, we're gonna see that type of savings, the whole savings. They don't get any more, we get it all. So that's what we're shooting towards, is getting, you know, that bill paid off, and then we get the whole savings. And right now, at the rate we're paying it off, you didn't actually put a pencil to that, but it's gonna be.
You're almost at twice the rate that we were suggesting. You're certainly over 1.5 times, almost at twice the rate in the 18 months, which is really, really good.
So which means you pay it off in half the time.
And how long was the note?
I think it was, I have to go back and look at my notes.
I
thought it was about.
It's 8 years. So it will be paid off maybe 4.5. But we've got to maintain that pace. I don't want to oversell. We have to maintain the disciplines that have been created here and the partnership as well.
And I will tell you, you know, we talked about the east side campuses are not on the list, and neither is this campus. The reason this one wasn't was because really it's kind of small, and it just didn't generate enough savings for it to meet their goal of having it pay for itself like this one is. But I'm of the opinion that if we pursue getting those campuses lined out, we'll see similar savings. Since we've added those 2 campuses, our total bill for Taylor Electric has stayed pretty darn consistent, because we're paying for those with savings. I mean, when you take into account, you know, that savings each month, it really helps us keep our utility costs down. So I can't wait to get the bills paid off and realize the whole savings.
We ran the numbers on the 2 new schools and this building, and over the same period of time, it's about 131,000. So you saved more than what you had.
No, and that's at 9%, or, because y'all had a different guarantee rate?
Well, the 9% that you saw on the sheet that I showed you earlier was the percent of demand of that bill. So
Okay.
almost $13,000 in just the demand portion of it. We have a addendum that we call addendum 1 and addendum 2. Mr. Light has those for the 2 new schools in this building. The difference between those addendums and where we are with you on this particular project is there won't be any guarantee associated with those projects, and we won't be tracking on a monthly basis like we are these.
If we decide.
If you decide to go forward.
But I would say, there's a lot of things that have been benefit of this. One of the big ones I like is that I could call Michael Pruitt or Richard Cumbie or several others. we've got the PAC, we had something at the PAC earlier this year, and somehow nobody remembered to put it into the system. And Michael was out of pocket, and they said, well, call Richard. And I called Richard. He was on his way somewhere. He had the program on his cell phone, and he turned it on from wherever he was, and saved the day for us, because we got the PAC up and running because of the system in place. So
That's what I was gonna ask, so I love the savings,
oh,
but what kind of feedback have you gotten back from administrators and teachers as far as, it's been 18 months, like,
Sure.
is it easy, is it user-friendly still, are they still like, this is the process, like, what is?
So from the management standpoint, it's user-friendly. I would say that, for example, we have a few teachers, as you might guess, with as many teachers we have, that run a little different hotter than others.
Yep.
We've actually got, in our office, Desiree, I'm not pointing at you.
Not pointing, but that's what I'm saying.
We have some that they're cold, and others that are warm. And so we are gonna have some of that. For some, it's a movement of air. The temperature is actually not that bad, but they miss a movement of air. So we've worked through those things. I'm not saying we're 100% perfect.
Save yourself a movement there.
Jeez, I'll be paying for that tomorrow.
Boy, I got a joke in there.
Anyway.
Because it's great, but I just want to make sure that it's also.
Sure. I would say when we start, and I think Robert would tell you that there's always a learning curve, and you're trying to get, one of the things that I think we talk about is that there is a acclimation period that actually, because there is less movement of air, that is one of the ways they are able to generate the saving. They don't keep the air handlers running all the time. And so there is some acclimation that has to take place. Is everybody 100% happy? I'm not gonna say that, but they weren't 100% happy before, because I just can tell you, we got, you walk around an office, you'll find somebody with a foot heater in the middle of the summer. It's crazy, I'm just telling you. But then you throw in 650 employees, so I'd say there's always somebody that would like it to be on their individual deal. But
This may be a Julie's question, but is that savings captured on like our revenue anywhere on this report?
no, now remember, the 80% of that savings goes to payments.
Okay.
20% actually would be less expenditures. So it'd be in the 51 that we pay utility bills. So,
Like last month's electric bill was $40,000, and I thought, for a June bill, that was awesome.
it was a fairly mild June, but I would say, there was a time, and I'm gonna have a hard time, I have to go digging for it, but there was a time when I know we paid several, this will make you cringe, $70,000 utility bills, or electric bills. And they were pretty consistently, 50s, I'm not gonna say we didn't have a 60 at some point this year, but much better, and we've added 2 campuses. So that's pretty incredible. And that's why, these amounts to do these other 2 campuses are below $50,000. I think, that doesn't require board action to do something like that, but unless y'all see a reason for us not to continue to chase this kind of savings, I think we should consider it. So, okay. Thank you all.
Questions for Robert?
Thank you, Robert.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you
Have a
coming.
safe trip home.
Thank you
very much. Thank you for bumping me up. Appreciate it.
All right. Let's see, Mr. White, I think we've got to talk about lunch prices, don't we?
Yes, sir. So that's the first thing, if I were you, I'd say, why are we having to talk about lunch prices? Because you said next year our lunches are going to be free and our breakfasts are going to be free. But part of that process is just like we were talking about, different people needing to apply for free and reduced lunches. We also have to set the prices. So, as far as that process goes, we are going to recommend that we keep our lunch prices the same, and go from there. Let me just make a comment, because Carol and I were talking about this today. We actually had a higher revenue on our lunches this year, and we still have August in front of us, which there's a bunch of deposits made in August that goes towards that revenue, correct? I mean, historically, historically. But guess what? If we're telling everybody you don't have any lunches costs, we're gonna lose that revenue. And our expenditures are higher too. So, I mean, it's gonna look wonky anyway this year, but, this whole thing with the Texas Department of Ag providing free breakfast and lunch will make that thing hard to predict exactly where we're gonna land on it.
Do they set the amount that they're gonna reimburse you or pay for?
Pay for.
Or will they do it? Okay, so we're setting these not knowing, you were just
Well,
gonna get the money, we'll do whatever.
Did Christie already get a
Christie
report?
probably knows what those rates are.
Yes, I think we actually did get a report that has that. I don't have that. Why don't you make a note?
One of the rates, that was $4 and something for lunch.
Yeah, for
Like
lunch.
$4.28, and that's a real high, it used to be like $2 and something was in the first.
So we're setting this, but it may not, I don't understand. If we're setting this number,
It requires us to do it, but
Right.
they're gonna reimburse at a rate that they set.
right, okay. that's-
So even though we will have a set amount, if we were to charge,
They
they're
will
gonna-
reimburse their amount.
That's correct. Now, I will say this, something that I found interesting in a discussion I had with Christie Landeros, who's our food service manager. We actually charge, I think, a little bit more for our breakfasts than we would get reimbursed. But here's the kicker, and my principals will probably throw something at me if we are a whole lot better, we hadn't really talked about this. We are a whole lot better if everybody eats breakfast than we are if we do it the way we do it currently, charging more.
Done.
Yeah, I mean, because if they come through, you get all those reimbursements. As it is, we serve very few kids for breakfast. And if we serve everybody breakfast,
That could
now
be
that,
quite a bit if you encourage, I mean, you really could.
so,
Yeah.
but there's logistics issues, and that's something there's just, yeah.
Breakfast anymore.
Oh, so it's a selfish motivation.
So, with all that said, we're recommending the.
So we gotta check the box.
Yes,
What you're saying.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions? I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve breakfast and lunch prices as listed above for the 2021-22 school year.
Second.
Does that work for you, Mr. White?
Yes, sir.
Does that work for you, Ms. Desiree?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, Mr. White. T-test, let's talk about teacher appraisal.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Vaughn to come forward and share this. He actually has kind of become our teacher incentive allotment, T-test, which for teachers, and T-pest, which is for principals expert. So, Mr. Vaughn?
But I want to ask Mr. Raymond a question.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm ready.
Come on up, stand aside. Okay, first of all, I'm going to ask you to adopt 4 things. You see it on the list there. First of all, to actually adopt T-test as our appraisal system. The state gives us an option to develop our own. We're not interested in that. So we're good with T-tests. I'm afraid I would be the one that have to develop it. Second thing is you can see the calendar. Basically, we wait a couple of weeks to start appraisals after school starts. We don't hit them first couple weeks of school, and then we get them wound up a couple weeks before the year is over. So that's the window we're asking you to approve. Approve appraisers and second appraisers. You can see the list of appraisers. That's the principals and assistant principals. On the list that I'm looking at, there were a couple of folks left off. Mr. Hager asked if he could be on there, and myself as well. So there are two other names we need to include
Can we add
there.
those to the record?
They're on.
They're on.
We gave him an old.
I guess I have no cheat. And
Oh, yeah, there they are.
then the last thing is determine whether or not T-test will be used for consideration for contract renewal. And we would say yes, that we would like T-test to be a consideration in contract renewal. You guys have any questions?
Is this any different than we've used the last several years?
It is not any different in the last, I think T-test is about 5 years running.
I have a question, and it goes with the teacher incentive allotment. Will that come the next year? And I guess in 2 years, we'll have to add, won't you have to pay someone, or are we paying? Or is that this year?
I'm not sure I'm quite able to answer today.
Okay, that's fair.
Hopefully I can.
So it's not something we have to
If that will
add
factor
year after
into
year.
the,
Okay.
I don't know if that will change anything as far as our adopting this as an appraisal instrument.
Okay.
The
The people, I guess, is that what I'm saying. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it'll somehow with the, I'm not sure.
Okay, no, that's fair,
exactly
yeah.
how to answer you there.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But I will say they're gearing up. They've been doing some calibration, not recalibration.
We have been working, T-test, what the principals have been working on specifically is, we've all had homework this summer. Because there has not been a need necessarily for, say, Mr. Smith as a high school evaluator to get on the same page as Ms. Salmon as this campus evaluator. Everybody just kind of operate their own deal as long as they're consistent within their own campus. We're good. But when you start tying money to it and it's all on one system, and we've asked a couple of times, because some of us have the opinion that it seems like it should be broken down into a lower grades, a middle grades, and upper grades as far as looking at this TIA, this incentive. The state said, no, you're wrong there. So we have to put everybody on the same. So now it's important that Ms. Salmon's appraisals look like Mr. Smith's appraisals and everybody in between. So there are some videos out there that we're all watching 3 each, and then we're going to get together when everybody's back the first week of August and compare notes. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. And then also, I'm a T-test calibrator. We're going to do some side-by-side evaluations and then compare notes as well. We think that's the best way that we can do it to get everybody on the same page. So that's what we're working on as far as getting our appraisals consistent throughout the district.
Does anybody on this list need reteaching?
They kicked me off, what does that tell you?
Let's see, now that we've added myself and Mr. Hager, I'm gonna say yes. Any other questions that I might actually can answer? All right, thank you.
Anything else about this, Mr. White?
No, we do have to adopt a
Right.
teacher.
Is everybody square on what this is? Okay.
I'll give it a shot. I move, number one, the adoption of T-test. Number two, fall appraisal period as the date is listed, the spring appraisal period dates listed, yearly appraisal period dates listed. Number three, the appraisers listed. And number four, T-test will be used on a contract renewal decision.
A second.
Thank you.
Suffice?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations. You guys get to be a principal. I can see the joy on your face. All right. Intra-district residency changes, Mr. White.
Yes, sir. This goes back a little ways. When we started really being concerned about where folks were living, and when this came strongly about two things, when we did the east and west campuses, and also we, for the first time, had apartments in the district, we were concerned, I would say we, mainly me, that people were going where they were supposed to be going. So when we asked the board to tweak our policy from an enforcement of this to it was at the end of a semester enforcement, and we moved it to the week of the change of residency. Really, for the most part, that worked okay. You always are going to have some people unhappy when you tell them they've got to move schools. What we have seen, or what I have seen, is that in reality, the apartment issue has not been there. That has not been a true. Again, I kind of created a mountain out of a molehill. I was anticipating problems because of mobility, and it just didn't happen. So that really became a moot point. Where it really became an issue was when someone lived on the east side and moved to the west side, and all of a sudden, here's the superintendent saying, hey, you've got a week to move, to change campuses, and it could be at any point in the year. And it was, I'm gonna say, for 4 to 8 families, it was not much, they were not very happy with Joey Light. But and I may agree that I didn't necessarily think that was best educationally for that student, but I felt like I had told so many people that we were sticking with the move the same week that happened, that we had to remain consistent. After having done that several times to folks that were staying within Wylie ISD but changing one side or the other, I feel like it would be better for us to allow that residency, not the residency, the school change to take place at the end of a semester, similar to what we did previously. It seems like most of the principals felt like there would at times be some academic advantage to that. And also, it just seems like it's a cleaner, easier break. For one thing, your teachers' grades are finished at semester. It's easier to move those from one to the other. I do think the other thing that would be more consistent to what other people in our area are doing, our other districts, and so it's a little bit easier to explain as well. And so what I'm asking for is to go back to semester. Now, I would ask on the intra-district policy to allow a little week leeway in that if I'm on a basket, that really the only sport that impacts is basketball because it straddles the semester. And if I'm on an A team or a B team or whatever team I'm on, if I have to move, then there is a lot of issues so you were on the A team on the east side, that doesn't mean you automatically get to be on the west side. We just feel like it would be better in those scenarios to let that end when that season ends. So, did I express that properly? Did I?
Finish the season.
Yeah, they can finish the season.
Whatever it is.
Now, I would say we also talked about cheerleading, but the cheerleaders, the feedback we got was that they generally, in junior high age, they're pretty much through after football season. If it came up that was different, we could look at it. Bells, we talked about that, but I don't know for sure exactly, but we would, if they straddled the semester, we'd do the same thing with them. So the next question is, what if they move out of the district? I would like to stay consistent with that semester rule, move by the end of the semester. That would be a change. And Mr. Vaughn will take care of that.
So let me make sure I understand this. That if we have a student that transfers within the district, or moves within the district, they remain at their school until the end of the grading period, which is a semester, that you will allow, which you would like flexibility to have you or a designee to make exceptions if it did affect the sport, etc.
504, special education, some other areas as well.
But basically, let them finish the grading period, and then if there was an extenuating circumstances that needed special circumstance, then we would look at that.
And if they say you moved and you wanted, because of transportation, you did want your kid to, that would be fine, but we wouldn't afford. So if I moved from the east to the west in September, and I said, I'm gonna be driving, I don't wanna drive to the other side of the district, I want them to be where we're living, that would be fine.
You can do that sooner.
Yes, you could do it immediately, but we wouldn't force it until semester.
Your crux is you just want to make sure that you're consistent.
That's correct. It's, as they'll tell you in the front office, it's a challenge because there's a lot of good reasons for people not wanting to do it. And it's just, they have a hard time understanding why I'm saying no. And I sometimes look at myself and say, dang, I wish I didn't have to do that.
But you're basically following board policy.
That's right. That I recommend. So I have nobody to be mad at myself.
Well, I remember we did have a long discussion about this.
We did.
Questions or thoughts?
How does the motion need to?
You still chewing on this one?
Yeah, I have I'm sorry, yes.
Sure.
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
I don't know if it's relevant or not, but it kind of is. So the building time, like if you're building a house, it's what, 4 months, 6 months, what is it now?
120 days.
Okay, so what if, is that an exception or no?
So help me, give
So
me
like,
a-
let's say if it's not completed by, within those
We've always
days.
gone with the semester, on
Right.
that as well.
So like, let's say their clock starts in September, it lasts longer than the 4 months.
Well, now, if
Are
you're
you gonna
talking
make
about
it
an
a semester?
intra. if
Yes,
it's
intra.
Intra, if they hadn't moved, I wouldn't
But
necessarily.
they technically only have 400 and whatever many days to move, right?
120 days.
Better.
Is that
Well,
what
no,
the building contractor?
if they're in the district,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't, they would just stay put.
Correct.
Now, okay, so let me give you an example of a little bit of a problem there.
Because people are going to the side that they're building on,
That's correct.
and then what if the house isn't finished?
It doesn't start
In
until
those-
the change of address.
But they can go to that school while they're building, right?
Okay, yeah,
Now,
I
this
see what
sounds
you're
like the gray
saying.
area, but like, it could technically.
They could,
could
yes,
go over the
under there.
semester is what you're saying.
Yeah, they
Yes.
could go over a semester if the house.
Yeah,
isn't. Would that be an exception?
We try to give them a little
Okay.
bit of grace there. But let me give you a little bit of devil's advocate, because you're talking about that situation. If I'm living on the east side, and lo and behold, I put my house on the market, and 2 days later, they've offered triple what I wanted, it
Yeah.
happens all the time. They take it. They don't have their house built yet. They have to move out of the district to get a rent house. That's where we start getting a little bit of angst.
Yep.
And so,
That's-
there's been issues like that, I'm just telling you, you can't imagine.
Yeah, no, I was just talking intra-district.
Well, but this is,
Kinda
so
the
what we
same.
try to be is reasonable, if they, that house is going up, you see it's, you're gonna work with it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, chase them out
Yep, they do.
if that house is trying to be built. We put that in there so they'll act on the house,
Yep.
because otherwise they'll just string you along.
Yep, that's right.
So basically what we're saying is we're gonna have a standard rule at the end of the semester, but we're gonna give you or your designee some flexibility to do what's best for the student.
Yes, sir.
To do what's best for the student.
Yes, sir.
To do what's best.
Yes, sir.
You good?
Good. And so you were asking about how would you make that motion?
Yeah.
I would just say, the motion as, stated in the change in semester, instead of at the end of the week, the campus of attendance.
Could you say listed below?
Yes.
Something like that.
Okay. I move to adopt the policy regarding inter-district residency as listed below. On a roll here? Okay.
Yeah.
And allowing the superintendent or designee to make exceptions to the rule.
That works.
I'm seconded.
Is that an official second?
That's an official second.
Official second. We have an official.
Sorry.
We have an official second. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Any of you guys out there want to pipe in on this? No? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Wright, policy allowing homeschool students to participate in UIL extracurricular activities.
I would just, we heard some information in regard to House Bill 547. House Bill 547 gives us the ability to allow homeschool students to participate in UIL activities. There are a lot of things over the years that have been talked about in regard to this. As has been mentioned, these types of laws have been put in place in other states throughout the country. I will say Chris McCurley called me last week and was kind of asking me some questions in regard to it. And he said, when he was coaching in Arkansas, they passed that rule in Arkansas. And he kind of echoed my sentiment that there was a lot of angst and anxiety about what that might do to the athletics as we know them, and all UIL activities. But he said it was really a non-issue for them. That just didn't end up being what they had feared. And so that I think that tends to be what we do in education, myself included. I'll create something that I anticipate might be there, but it may not be there. Now, this allowing the district, the reason I brought this to the board, it got signed into law after our last board meeting, and yet, so here's the next board meeting, and we have to let the UIL know by August 1st, what our intentions are. And so, one of the things that I've asked Coach Martin to be here tonight to help me out if I stumble along the way any, but basically, there was a question, document says, who has the authority to do this? And it says the UIL doesn't tell what districts should do. They could have the board, they could have the superintendent, they could have the athletic director make that decision. Well, I did not feel comfortable keeping the board out of the loop on this thing because it's a pretty big decision. And now, I would say what I'm asking for is for me, the ability to make that contact, the UIL, if that's the direction we go. And I think I've shared with y'all my thoughts on it. I personally, after looking at everything and myself weighing the pros and cons, I would recommend that we allow them to do so. As Steve and I were talking as we were preparing for the board meeting, one of the things that we have always, I think as administrators, pushed in the district is student participation. We really want kiddos to be involved. These students, yes, they hadn't taken advantage of the public schools, but they do live in our district and they participate in supporting the schools like everybody does that lives in the district through taxes. You know, we will receive no other benefits. I mean, I don't see us doing this from a benefit standpoint to the district in any way financially. There would be some cost incurred to us. You know, you buy a helmet, that's expensive. You buy a musical instrument or whatever it is, there's going to be some cost incurred. That the state, if they were enrolled in the school, the state would give us extra funding. But again, I don't think that's necessarily the reason, in my opinion, that I would pursue to allow them. I do think we're, at this point, we are talking about a limited number of students. I personally only know of, at this time, of 2 that are going to be high school students who are, have expressed, have given me feedback that, hey, our kiddos would be taking advantage of that. So now that's not counting junior high. I think there could be some in the junior high levels as well. But again, that also includes band, it includes choir, it includes UIL academics. All of the UIL activities would be included in that. You know, there's, I will say this, if you were to have talked to me prior to the passage of the bill, I would have said, I am very concerned about this bill, and my stance was, with the legislature, I'm not really interested in passage of this bill. After having seen the bill, I will say, I feel like the legislators did their homework. They really tried to plug a lot of the holes that I thought was potential as far as homeschool students participating and my concerns about eligibility, which was my major concern because I didn't feel like it was necessarily a level playing field. But ultimately, I feel like most of those issues that I had were addressed, and that the students that will be doing that would be the beneficiaries of being with our kids. My goal, and I hope that at the end of the day, they're going to say, hey, this public school thing is a good thing, and I want to be part of it. Wylie's got something special up there, and I want to be part of that. And we'll see if that happens or not. But I'm sure that y'all are going to have some questions. I asked Coach Martin again to come and
come on up,
in case he had anything in particular. I mean, we have looked at this a lot of different angles, and I do think our thought, we had a very similar mindset. Clay, I don't know, you want to, anything in particular you want to?
I think, I think exactly what you said early on before the bill passed, I would have not been in support of it. You said a lot of times we had fear about things, so I had all kinds of questions, how it would go, and began to look into it. I think there's going to be things that are maybe not fully addressed by the UIL right now. but I think they tried to address all the major concerns. You know, I think it really puts the kids on the same playing field as another kid that would move in. In fact, there's even, from my understanding, more difficult, you know, types of qualifications that they would have to undergo, you know, like if they moved, and whether they would be eligible for varsity athletics within a calendar year, and I think there's some things like that. There's some questions that I think everyone still has, and I think there's a lot of questions that people across the state, you know, Dr. Maroney mentioned the coaching. I think the Coaching Association has some negatives about it. I think that they would vote against it. I think a lot of that is due to kind of some uncertainties that are still out there with UIL and how that's all going to play out as far as no pass, no play in each 6 weeks. My deal from the very beginning was equity. I want to be on this from a personal, just selfish deal in an equitable situation. You know, if I don't want to be in a situation where other districts are allowed to do this, and I think that's the concern of everyone, and especially from the Coaches Association. Is this going to be equitable? If some districts allow it, some districts do not allow it, and I think, to me, that's the biggest thing. Everyone I've talked to, I think, feels like in a year from now that this will be something that will be mainstream across the state. I think even the school districts that are right now considering voting no, feel like in a year that they will say yes. That they just are kind of waiting for more guidance, clear guidelines from the UIL before they make that decision. And so I am in no way, shape, or form an expert on this whatsoever. I've tried to call people and ask and gather information, especially today. And, you know, where I stand, I think, is very similar to Mr. Light. And, you know, if you have any other questions.
So something that we talked about too is, you know, at any point, I will say this, in the Q&A document that I sent y'all, they basically, one of the statements they made was, you know, if we decide this is not for us, can you opt out? And basically the document says, yes, you can. Then it talks about the issues that might be for alignment and classification. But really, as we talk, we are so far removed from that next level. I mean, we could have 400 homeschool students move in, and it would not change our classification, at least the way we understand they do it now. So that in and of itself, that piece, if we got into it and we said, geez, this is not what we planned on, we can exit. I mentioned that to Steve earlier today, and he was like, you know, I don't know that we should do that in the middle of the year, which I understand. You know, you get people to make plans, and all of a sudden you say, we're going to change. I agree that that's probably not the best actions. But the other thing that, as we talked about it, was what are the detriments? What's bad is going to come from this? I mean, it's not going to be a negative impact on our school anyway, I don't think. You know, if a kiddo is, let's say somebody comes in that's, you say, well, he's causing problems on the team or in the group. Well, they're just like anybody else. If they can't stand up to the same criteria that the other basketball player or the other, the coach can, you're off the team. If you can't maintain the discipline or, if you're causing problems on the team, you're out for 3 weeks or whatever. I mean, that's, so I think this is one of those where I'm not saying we're all just running in head first, wanting to jump in the middle of, but I really feel like what Clay said, I think this is going to be a mainstream issue soon. I mean, it's not necessarily right now, but I think it's going to be soon. And the folks, the few that have come to me, once, the Jowers gonna have a freshman girl, and we actually have an employee, Coach Rodriguez, his son's gonna be a sophomore boy. And that's the only two,
It's only two I know of.
yeah.
Reach
So
out.
I don't think it's gonna make a major impact. I feel like it'd be, in a small setting, would be nice for us to be able to iron out some wrinkles. Because I think there's gonna be wrinkles. I think we're gonna say, what do we, I didn't even think about that. And so we'll have to address those. One other thing, I think Cameron asked me the question on it wasn't in the Q&A, which I thought it was in the Q&A about the progress report. It was in this other document, which is the UIL document. But it talks about how you deal with the no pass, no play. And it basically says the parent must provide written verification to the school each grading period that the student is receiving a passing grade in each course or subject being taught. And so I think therein lies the rub. I mean, you're asking the parent to do that. And I mean, that's, as Coach Rodriguez told me, he said, that's the gorilla in the room. And I think it is. And so, but, I think they are going to be required. Now, correct me, I'm going to ask them a question because they've studied this pretty hard. But at the beginning, before each year, they have to show that they have advanced.
So the way that the UIL wording says is that prior to the start of school, if they're going to participate in the first 6 weeks, so if you're participating in a sport that is in those first 6 weeks, then you have to submit a norm reference test that they have scored average or above average on that. And those can be done, we've done them every year at the end of our school year. It's just been my way. We've done the Stanford test. It's my litmus test to go, hey, we need to work on this different subject. It can be done through, like, I do ours through BJU Press, and then they score it, and then they give me the results. And then those results will be taken to the school district. So the way that the law says is that it's good for one school year and the subsequent school year. So it's good for 2 school years. Like I said, the law just says that has to be given. The UIL says prior to the start of school. So I would think that would probably be something that the board needs to decide that it needs to be given by a certain date if you are participating in those first 6 weeks, or if you have a spring sport, it's given at a certain time. But there's definite, and that's the protection for if someone drops out and is going, okay, I want to be homeschooled now. They're going to have to wait an entire year to be able to participate. And then they're going to have to pass this test saying that they're at grade level, scoring average or above average on the test. So I think that's where the UIL and the legislators have done a great job of protecting all integrity of the system and keeping that in line.
So I would think that what we would end up doing, I don't necessarily think y'all as a board would have to develop those regulations. We would be working through UIL, through other school districts, see what other folks are doing in regard to that, to make sure that we are doing what the UIL expects us to do. So with that, just ask Coach to stay with me for just a little bit and open up, because I know there's got to be questions, because it's
I just didn't want him sitting here for an hour and a half.
I do have a question. You touched on, is the PAP process going to be the same if somebody, you don't know?
Well,
That's prior athletic.
Oh, sorry,
participation
yeah.
that he's talking about.
it's, there's some, they would know a lot more than me, but
Yep.
if you've moved even in the last year,
Mm-hmm.
it would set off a mandatory DEC.
District Executive Committee.
District Executive Committee hearing. And that's another reason, nobody wants that to happen on a statewide basis, a lot of, in which the decision would be made, in which they might not be able to participate in varsity athletics for a calendar year. any movement of school districts, unless I'm incorrect, it's gonna follow almost identical to the regional PAPF stuff that we have now, we follow just along. And you can't, just because you're homeschooled, you still have to live within that district, so it's gonna be just like you moved into another school district.
And so, as we were talking about it, the PAPF process on the surface seems to be almost identical. Almost identical. Go ahead.
I would agree with that. I think if anything, there's some built-in restrictions that are maybe even a little more restrictive, especially with the movement within the last.
I would say the one main thing is that there's a mandatory, it's a DEC, right?
Yes.
There's a mandatory DEC meeting for any homeschooler who has moved within the last 12 months, regardless. So.
And that's, DEC is the district that you're competing in, not Wylie district. It's the district representatives from the teams that you play.
We would have two different meetings, football district, executive committee with one for all sports. And that would be just an athletic standpoint. I guess the other, all other UIL activities would go with the one basketball and baseball. Yes. We're Lubbock.
The district executive committee is basically the first step prior to the UIL. So it's the first place you go for any legal remedy.
Yes.
Before, and then it could be appealed to the UIL executive committee for arbitration, but that's where it starts. What you've got here is that we designate you to determine homeschool student participation. Now, you're saying that that is to determine whether an individual can or if the district will allow. So you're saying if the district will allow, and then we would be telling you to come up with whatever systems, policies, control mechanisms required to do that, whether it's the academic requirements, whether it's the residency requirements, whatever coach has got to do there. You know, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, there's a requirement on a student being in school a certain part of the day before they go and compete. Well, obviously, that's a different animal here. So there's a myriad of things that you guys are going to have to work through. So, and it's going to end up being a normal part of the process, just like Coach talking about a transfer kid, kind of there.
And there's some, I mean, I may be speaking out of turn here, but there are some pitfalls, some things, you know, those school students will still be under the guidelines and under the rules of 60 minutes a day. Which I was really concerned about, and I was really glad they put that in there. A homeschool student could not finish their work at 10 o'clock and then go to ISD and play basketball for 3 hours. Or be a golfer and go play a round of golf. They would be in violation. The Coach Association is very concerned about that because how are we going to regulate that? And is the team going to be punished based on one individual breaking that 8-hour rule? And so that's a definite concern, and you know, that I would still have, but I think it's something you just have.
Well, that's going to have to be built into the contract almost. This, because parents are going to have to be aware of all those things.
That's right.
So it's going to be an educational process for, you know, for you guys to do. As Joe and I were talking about it, to me, the hard part is going to be y'all and your daughter.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a different culture. I mean, you played basketball in high school and in college, it's different. And there's gonna be a transition, and it's gonna be harder for her than it is for folks that come through the system. So, but I'm a participation person. I wanna give kids every chance they can. I don't wanna hinder you guys, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're doing it the way it's supposed to be done, by the way TEA and the legislature intended it. Follow the guidelines. Follow the guidelines that the UIL put forth. So it's going to be more work for you guys, and I'm hoping you assign it to one of your assistant athletic directors to manage. They need to, don't they? I know they're going to be happy to hear me say
Mr.
that.
Vaughn said he'd do it.
Brad had a question. I saw a look in his eye a little
Well,
bit.
that was going back to the progress report. Is that just gonna be a verification my kid is passing? I mean, there's gotta be some kind of,
I mean,
there is a,
No, that would be that's something that we've been talking about, because we're trying to help the
Yeah.
process as much as possible, but that would just be something that I'm guessing each district would have to decide, is there a certain form?
Okay.
Write down what classes you're taking, what grades do you have, and that's what you submit, so it's kind of a standardized form.
And an integrity statement and signing
Yeah,
that as a
like a
community,
contract.
yeah,
my kid's passing.
yeah.
in other words, I don't trust Sam Maroney, so I'm just saying he's out. No, and I retract that.
You just need one Cincy vote.
It's all Coach Wallace is one.
I was hoping for a mathematics champion.
Why can't they be both?
Yeah.
Why can't they be both? Do you guys have any more questions for Coach? Do y'all have any more questions for Mr. Wylie?
Good luck.
Very much.
Good luck.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. Sorry. My first school board meeting.
Do you have a question for us?
Okay, let me see if I can find a question for you. Would lead yourself into making that statement that you want to make here. What sport would your daughter be engaged in, and what has prompted this? Does that maybe help you ask that question? Say what you're going to say?
Right now, she does volleyball and basketball, and we're trying to promote her to do other stuff. Track or something, yeah, probably impossible, but, again, before I want to reiterate that, like what Mr. White said, you guys have complete control over this. So if you get to the end of the year and you start noticing, you know what, we got parents and kids that are abusing this system, and you think it's something that's not good for your students and for the school to be involved with that, every year you guys can come up for a vote on this. So it's not once you're in forever.
Well, and I would even say you don't have to vote on it, because this
We'll
authority
give you the
giving me the chance. Now, I wouldn't do it. I would blindside y'all and y'all not be aware of it. Y'all wouldn't have to have an action.
I think we're ready to move. Are we not?
So I move to designate the superintendent to determine homeschool students' participation in UIL activities.
A second.
Did you get that?
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you guys for being here and for your willingness to engage in this.
Thank you, Coach. You don't have to stay.
No, he's gonna stay here the whole time, long as president. Items for information, Mr. Light. Why don't you turn the principal loose?
Yes. Okay.
We're in the long haul, let's go.
Summer board meetings, those are the next two dates put on your calendar. Just a reminder, on Monday the 30th, that is a special board meeting. We'll have a public hearing to open that up to our process. We'll adopt a budget, set a tax rate, and then make budget amendments to the current school, the one we're finishing up. So that's board meetings and workshops.
All right, we've already done B and C, technology.
I've asked Brad McVeigh to be here, Tony Scraven's here as well, to kind of give an update. I know there were some questions at the last board meeting when we had a presentation in response to where we are in technology. So Brad, if you would kind of give us a state of the technology.
It's in the state. Well, I'm glad to get to address you on it, because over the last 2.5 years, we've had some pretty critical comments about technology. Some of y'all are aware, and we the perplexing thing was nobody has ever asked a single question or inquired of anything from us. And so some of the information has not been very accurate that's been presented. So I'm glad we get a chance to at least address it. Right now, our state of technology is, we just got through doing imaging every single teacher computer. We've gone through almost every iPad. And we have all of our Chromebooks issued. And so we have a good count of what we have. It should be pretty accurate. We currently try to run about a 5-year replacement cycle. That's just prudent. Y'all were talking about a piece of pie during the budget meeting, and right now I spend between $275,000 and $325,000 a year on replacement equipment. And it's grown considerably over the last 5 years as our student count has grown. But right now, we have for computers, which is computers and laptops combined, we have 1,798 computers total. We have 1,670 iPads and 894 Chromebooks. And a lot of the iPads and Chromebooks, thank goodness for, COVID is terrible for the nation and everybody, but it got us a lot of devices. And so it's been a bonus for the school district device-wise. So as a total, we have 4,362 devices. Now, 502 of those, actually 504 of those are non-student devices. And that's cafeteria computers, secretary computers, principals. Those are people who are not non-student users. So that leaves us with 3,858 student computers. And that sounds like a lot. We have, like I said, we've come a long way in the last 2 years. That gives us a 1.27 to 1 based on 4,900 students. And so that's where our device count is right now. Now of those, we will replace probably 350 to 500 of them this year. And one thing that is going to benefit us a lot is our Chromebooks are running this little less than $300 a piece, where before we've been spending anywhere from $500 to $800 for student computers. Like right now, micros, I'm about to purchase some micros for a lab, and they're going to run us about $630 a piece, and that doesn't include the monitors. And so you're looking at $730, $40 for replacement. We do Chromebooks, and in fact, we just talked to Ricky Bacon. He asked me if we could, instead of replacing the lab over at the junior high, do Chromebooks a cart. And for the same price as the lab, we can get 3 Chromebook cards with 90 Chromebooks instead of replacing that lab. So Chromebooks are going to begin benefiting us. Software-wise.
So hold it before you leave that. So if that's the case, why would you ever buy a laptop or a desktop computer?
For specific purposes. You have UIL. UIL does Microsoft Office and Adobe applications, and so we got to do those.
Because you don't, on a Chromebook, you do
You cannot put Microsoft Office on the device itself, so it's required to use. We still have to purchase laptops.
But they don't have a hard drive.
To use, but they, not really. Yeah, they come with 32 or 64 gigabyte SSD in them, which is not enough room to put it. They can access Office 365, but that's not qualified for on the cloud. But that's not authorized for UIL testing and use. And so we'll still have to buy a few laptops. And of course, computers, we'll still be buying computers for teachers and our special ed Title I labs. There's certain applications that are going to require Windows and that you can't run on Chromebooks. And so we're not ever going to go strictly to Chromebooks, but man, it sure is good for all of these web-based products that we're using nowadays. And it's a lot of them. We use a lot of that.
So like Chad's
drafting lab will always be, that's always going to be regular
Desktop.
computers, desktops. Yeah, he runs AutoCAD. Chad Witter teaches 2 periods of AutoCAD, and, which is excellent. But we'll do that. And then the oddity of different things. Chromebooks will take the place of a lot of the iPads, but in our physics classes at the high school, they do this. They have this app that they do their physics experiments on, and it runs on an iPad only. And so they have 50 iPads, that basically we will, we'll maintain whatever they need for curriculum. So it's a moving target. One of the things that's on my email that I send out to everybody is a statement that says, planning is not a vision of the future, but rather a roadmap to a destination over terrain we have not yet traversed toward a goal that will most likely change while we're moving toward it. And that's technology. I mean, who'd have guessed where we would have been 5 years ago? I mean, everything has changed. And so it's always a moving target. I mean, it's difficult to keep up with. But we've been criticized for things being outdated. We run a 5-year cycle, and that's just prudent. I mean, we can't replace things every 3 years. That would just be tremendously expensive. We can't do that. We've looked at doing 101 initiatives. That's been a big question that's come up. They've had 2 big studies, one in Maine and one in Texas, about 1-to-1, and objective large. One of them was 22 school districts, the other one was 16 school districts, and that have done the 101, and they both came out to where there wasn't any increase in scores after they implemented it. And a matter of fact, the one in Maine actually had a decrease, and that was in 2010, which was earlier. The studies that they're doing now, and I've talked to a lot of school districts about it, they have really 2 main problems. One is sustainability. Once you buy those, especially if you start them in 7th grade and junior high, which most schools do, they're not going to last 6 years. So you have to repurchase them, and it's expensive. You have to have more people to take care of them, and sustainability is difficult for a 101 initiative. The other thing with them is if you don't have an increase in scores, there's probably a reason for that, and the reason is it takes a tremendous amount of training for teachers and a lot of investment in them. And the last couple of studies I read earlier this summer about them was that then the question comes up, was the increase in scores because you got your teachers invested and trained and really worked hard on your teacher preparation with your curriculum, or was it because you gave everybody a computer? And so it's a tough go, especially for us, and that piece of the pie would shrink from somebody. If we go to 1-1 initiative, it's going to shrink considerably. And so, y'all have any questions about 101 initiatives at all? We had a pretty sharp criticism a couple of years ago on that. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is we had our software that we run Office 365, which means all of our kids, teachers, all have the latest Office product, and you just can't beat that. And so we don't have to worry about purchasing future updates, and that's free from Microsoft. So that's been excellent. Our Adobe Creative Cloud, Adobe products, whether it's Adobe Acrobat for the kids, Illustrator. Our kids use Adobe Premiere in their digital graphics class in high school, and they, it's a top of the line product. And it's on a subscription basis, so it's always the latest that we have out there, so that's been good. And then Mr. Hagler, he keeps up with all of our curriculum software, and he can give you a list. I'm not going to, so it's pretty extensive, but he can give you a list. We've done well over the last few years, whittling down and narrowing down what software we use, and what we use is the best we can find. And so it's been good. So the other thing, technology-wise, is Joey needs to put on his earplugs. We have purchased 188 interactive panels. Have y'all seen our interactive panels? They look like a television, but they're touch. They're interactive. You can have 20 touches at a time on it. At $484,000 the last 3 years. And so this year we're replacing 60 this summer, and that get rid of all our Promethean boards, and hopefully over the next year we'll replace all the smart boards. And so.
And let's also say, why are we doing this?
We're doing it. It's not like I wanted to do that. It's a lot of work, and I tell you, we ordered our first order of 20 of them May 14th, and they were supposed to be in 2 weeks, and we got them last Thursday. So I'm sweating it getting into the new year. I got, after that 20, I got 30 more boards to get in and get installed. But basically, Windows 10, Promethean never has updated their drivers. They haven't for about 5 years. And so every computer that had a Promethean board, we haven't been able to update them since last summer, because if they do, they blue screen and we can't get them back. And it's because of the Promethean drivers. And so we had no choice. We had to replace the Promethean boards. And so that's 61 of them this summer. And so it's very irritating.
But we had those for a really long time.
Yes,
We have. Yeah, I put in the first smart board in 1997 at Wylie. And we took it out 2 years ago.
Wow.
Joey loved it. He goes around. So,
He asked the person to talk to you?
yeah.
Carol Stringfellow.
Yeah, Carol Stringfellow was our first
Making
one.
that thing go.
Yeah, so we got rid of the abacus the same day. He's been holding on to it, but,
And the driver.
yeah, it's not true. We didn't have an abacus, but we also have approximately, not exactly, we have about 160 document cameras for teachers, and we get one for every teacher that requests it. And we rolled a lot of those out this last couple of years. They love them. And we put out, during COVID, 260 webcams for teachers to use for remote instruction and different things. They still have them. So we'll see what happens this school year, and I'm not sure if they'll use them or not. We still have a software called Screencast. They can record their lessons, and some of the teachers, I talked to several schools last year when we were going through the COVID mess, and some of their teachers would actually record their lesson and screencast the first period of the day in high school, and then the rest of the day, they would replay their lesson to the kids while they walked around and helped them. And so I talked to a couple of our teachers about that. Yeah, I don't think they were that interested, but it's an interesting concept for them to look at. So, but as far as outdated stuff or us being behind the times, I go to TCA, a big conference, technology conference in Austin, biggest one in Texas. I do that about every 3 years. I talk to schools, I talk to our vendors, and there's something new out there, and I mean, you can put in a digital wall. Mr. Stradlin put in a digital wall for a dentist office down the street, and for about $100,000. You know, we might could do that for a few classrooms, but it's, you know, I don't know what would be out there that we're not
Aren't
using.
you Drew, Brad?
We're ahead of a lot of the schools. I go to Skyward Conference every year, and I talk to schools a lot, either whether Skyward or technology, and if you want to compare us, I think the biggest thing that may be a little different for us is our scores. There's nowhere for us to go. We went 101, where we're going to raise our scores to. And if we invested $1 million to do a 101 initiative, if you got, you know, a net gain of a point on our star scores, you know, is that worth $1 million? And it's you know, it's tough to know where to go in technology. It really is, and there's really nothing out there that we're not doing. And so, y'all have any questions?
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Star results, Mr. White.
Mr. Hager's gonna come up and fill you in on what are some pretty good results.
Yeah, it's my privilege to be able to present to you the 2021 STAR results, and I use the word privilege because our students, they did a pretty good job. Actually, they did a really good job considering the circumstances that they had to deal with all last year. And so I commend the principals that are here for the leadership they provide their teachers, and I commend the teachers for the job they did preparing the students with this assessment. TEA and the commissioner made the decision last fall that we were going to give the students the assessments during the pandemic time. And they informed us at that time that school campuses and school districts would not be held accountable as far as the ADF accountability system, but we want to see where our students were academically during the pandemic. And what you see here is a result of that. And this is not the easiest chart to read. I know you have it in front of you, so I'm going to try to help you understand how to read this chart. You see over on the left side all of the subjects that we tested the students in. And you see it's divided by grade level. What gets confusing to people learning in school business is the approaches, meets, and master's grade level. We've talked about that several times, but it's probably a good time for review. The state defines approaches grade level as a student who, all these students on this chart have passed the test. They divide them into those three categories. They define the student that approaches grade level as a student who needs a little bit of remediation, tutorials to be successful at the next year. And they will most likely be successful next year if we provide that. At the meets grade level are students who do a little bit better on the test and need a little less remediation to be successful at the next grade level. And master's grade level is a student who's doing really well, needs no remediation, and we expect them to do well at the next grade level. So when you look at this chart, obviously you look over at the test, and then you look at the grade, and you look at the result. The main thing you need to realize is that approaches grade level is pass-fail. Everybody that's in the green approaches grade level, they pass the test. We want all of our students in approaches grade level. We really strive and have goals for them to be in the meets and master level, because that means we've shown improvement, we've shown growth. So there's two things that really stick out to me when we look at this chart. One of them is, and we always provide the board and our community with a comparison to the region and the state. We think it's important that you can compare apples to apples. So one thing that really sticks out in this chart that we're very, very proud of is that you see that every test, every grade level, we are higher than both the region and the state. We have high expectations for our students, and our students seem to meet that each and every year. The other thing that stands out on this report is in the approaches grade level, when you look under where it says district, you do see, if you compare it to previous years, that our scores are a little bit lower than they have been in years past. I think that was expected. It's across the state level. So now we've got to come up with a game plan. How are we going to get our scores back to where they were in 2019 pre-pandemic? And we've got the leadership and the staff, the students and the community that I think we can do that. Another thing that I'm going to mention on this report is, if you remember back in February, we came up with board goals, and y'all approved our board goals. That's required in House Bill 3 in third grade reading and math. We set a goal back in February, and our goal for third grade math was 58%. If you look in the blue at the meets grade level. Remember I told you green approaches grade levels pass-fail. But board goals, the state required us to set our goals at the meets grade level, because that's where we aim to be. So in third grade reading, our goal was 58%, and we exceeded it, even during a pandemic. So we're very, very proud of that. So I think we can continue with the growth, with the goals that we set last February in reading. But if you look down to grade 3 in math, our goal was 66%, and we missed that by 5% because our score was 61% at the meets level. I think when we spoke that night, we told you that both those, we felt those were very lofty goals. I don't think it's surprising that maybe we didn't meet that with what we've had to endure. So I think myself, our principals, Mr. Bacon, Mrs. McMillan, who are both going to have third grade this year, and Mr. Boone will get together and maybe reassess those goals and see what we need to do from this point forward. But if you look at this, we're very, very proud of the scores. I think we did a great job. Please understand, if you look at this chart, compared to the region and state, we're still where we've been in previous years. There's always room for improvement, and that's our goal, is to get back to where we were pre-pandemic and then improve. There's a lot on there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Y'all are awesome.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm really so excited about it.
Thank you very much.
Y'all are awesome.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good job.
Very good.
I just keep the lights on.
Who's going to lead the student handbook discussion? Oh, Reagan Berry.
I'm going to ask Reagan Berry to come up. Let me, before she gets started, let me preface this discussion with, every year we bring to y'all student handbooks from every campus in August, and we stack them in front of you and say, bless these. You don't approve them, but just bless them, and we're going to go out and do it. And I think that's a little unfair sometimes, because some of these issues, could at times you could get a phone call, what in the world are they doing over there, and why are they doing it, and blah, blah, blah. So, Mr. Smith actually had come to me and said, there are some things we just like to put out there to know that we are trying to adjust to the circumstances. I mean, schools are different than they were 10 years ago, I promise you. And so, I've asked Tim, I asked Tim to do it, but since Reagan is here, Tim is in Colorado, so he couldn't be here. So Reagan agreed to kind of share some thoughts, and then we'll go from there. So Reagan Berry is the assistant principal at the high school and does a great job.
Well, thanks. Yeah, as the year goes, we kind of make notes. I keep a Google Doc, but we make notes of things that in the handbook that we had to address, or a discipline issue that we reference the handbook with, and we really use it as a guide for disciplinary issues, but also for grading and all of that. Overall, we're pleased with our handbook, but there are small little changes that we like to make in either wording or verbiage, or adding to or taking out. And so I just wanted to give y'all kind of our thought process, and I think the other administrators would agree that that's kind of the process that we go through. When we discuss, one of the topics that is addressed daily nearly, especially at the high school level, is dress code. And so we're always tossing that around and how to, certain aspects of our dress code. And then there's fashion trends that come and go. And so some years we're dealing with one thing more than the other thing. And then some years, those trends are very hard to deal with as administrators. And we catch a lot of pushback. Overall, our community is very supportive. Our parents typically are very supportive. Sometimes the student will push back, but then you call mom or dad and they're like, no, I'll come up there and take care of it. But there are some issues that are bigger than they have been. So those are the ones that we talk about and we toss around in administrative meetings as well. So with that being said, dress code being our main issue that we kind of make changes and tweak year to year. When we discuss student dress code, the dress code is intended to provide guidance for our students and our parents of what's appropriate to wear to school and to school functions. In addition, we feel passionate that a dress code, a lot of times as a teacher, I would tell students, I have a dress code, and that's preparation for employment and preparation for life, post-high school and post-graduation. And so we think that's also an important skill for our students to understand that there are expectations in the workplace or at school, and they're certainly different than recreationally in the summer as well. So some of our guiding principles for dress code are based on clothing that doesn't distract from the learning environment, which that is always up in the air because one thing could be distracting for one and not the other. And so that sometimes when it comes down to us making those decisions and having those and that's where a good relationship with our parents and our students comes in to play there. But also, does it disrupt school activities? And of course, is there a safety hazard with the attire that's being worn for the student or for others around them? We always ask that our students, and I think at Wylie, one thing that makes Wylie so great is you can walk into our campus and most of the time everyone is well groomed. It's just a nice place to be where it looks like there's not a lot of distractions. You don't have someone walking by and, eyes get big and what is that? And so that's one of the things that makes Wylie so great, and we want to continue that, and that's something that is always in our mind, even with some of the crazy fashion trends that come and go from year to year. And so as you look at our current handbook, I think the next board meeting is whenever we lay those in front of you. And so all of our current handbooks are online right now that can be looked at and reviewed, and they're a really good read. Yeah, really good summer reading by the pool. But also, if you have time to do that summer reading, to make notes of things that you may see. Y'all are out talking to the people, just as we are as well, talking to our groups of friends and, people our age and parents. make notes of things that you may think these are big deals, this isn't a big deal. We survey our teachers, we obviously get input from the students frequently as we approach them about dress code, but our teachers get surveyed, and we kind of have a list of priorities that our teachers want to make sure that we enforce strictly, and some things that they're, it's nice, but it's not something that a hill that they would die on, That as you look at the handbook, and not just dress code, but as you look at the handbook, maybe make note of some things that if you see modifications or verbiage things that you may think need to change, don't hesitate to let us know as we prepare to make those changes and then give y'all those next school board meeting.
And so, with that said, as Reagan pointed out, there are gonna be some things that are gonna come to you in the year that you may have a question about. You may say, well, why this, why not that? And we do have the opportunity to address those during the year, but we like to try to anticipate as many of those in advance as we can. We're a month away from that next school board meeting where we're basically gonna, again, share those. Again, just as a reminder, we do not adopt handbooks, we adopt policy and the student code of conduct, which supersede handbooks. So if we made a mistake in a handbook, we can rectify it. If y'all have any of those thoughts, I know that a lot of these issues tend to surface in junior high and high school as far as dress code in particular, but there's a lot of issues that are brought up in the handbook. So if y'all know of anything that kind of stuck in your craw, or somebody stuck in somebody else's craw and then you heard about it, let us know, and we can at least do some investigation and maybe if it warrants it, to make some adjustments. So.
You have any questions?
Just a thought. All this talk about dress code, and I don't think I've ever heard this discussion or topic, but what about, anybody ever suggested uniform, school, or I don't know what the word is for it, or a similar attire, khakis and whatever, I don't know, as a dress code?
You send 100 teachers an anonymous survey, somebody's gonna recommend uniforms.
But I'm just wondering, what's the thought process?
I don't know if you.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into this, see what time it is?
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Let me just say, uniforms they cycle. The interest in uniform cycle. I think between Tommy and I over the years, that probably surfaced.
It's come up a few times.
It was a hot topic when I was a principal in junior high. And, at that time, I'm not talking about just here, but locally, there was never much stomach to go that far. There was always some parents that would want to do it. They say, make my life simpler. You just do this, it's cheaper, and you just put them in this and go, don't have to worry about dress code, those kind of things. But for every one of those, I think there's probably 3 others that would say something. Kim?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when I was at the middle school doing dress code, I was looking for any way out of that. So I called several schools about uniforms, and they said basically you've got the same situation. Oh, your shirt's not red. Oh, it has to be tucked in. You're not wearing a belt. Those aren't the right
You rolled up
pants.
your shorts.
Yeah, they dealt with dress code as well, just in a different way.
I think a dress code uniforms would be interesting. I think it might be a challenge to sell.
I was just wondering.
Yeah. I know it cycles.
Yeah.
It cycles. The
What's the word
interest
was
for
out on the
people.
streets.
Yeah.
Get rid of my daughter's holy jeans, that's for sure.
Now, there is nothing that stops any parent from putting their kid in a uniform.
You have holy khakis though. It is like khakis from holy.
Reagan, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, So, any other thoughts besides the uniform thing?
Mike said it, so it was right.
Just a question.
You opened the door.
All right, thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Reagan. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, everybody. I wish y'all could stay around and be a part of what we're fixing to do here for the next 2 hours. But y'all have a nice evening.